Hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome to another episode of Sci-Fails, where we look at some bad science coming from the internet, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or TikTok or any place that I find some bad takes on. Especially here lately, I've been on an archaeology kick. With the whole Robert Seffer thing, with him coming after Erica and Kaylee, who make great historical content and are credentialed in what they talk about. It drug me down this rabbit hole of all these crazy ancient civilization theories. But I think I may have found the most far-fetched one of all. And, you guys tell me what you think. I'm just going to dive right into it, and you all can be like, oh, I hadn't heard of this, because you haven't, I'm sure. Maybe you have. I doubt it, though. But let's hear what these guys have to say about the prehistoric megastructure discovered in New Zealand, the Kaimanawa Wall. You ready to have your woo brain blown out?
New Zealand is the last major landmass on Earth to be settled by humans. This distant island, located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, remained uninhabited.
And I don't know if you're one of the people that take your meds with me, but now it's take your meds time. So I'm going to do it. 11 o'clock is, but I'm going to do it right now while I'm thinking about it, or else I'll forget. So if you have meds and you want to start doing this with me, I do this on the show at 11. I try to anyhow. So we're going to do this. I got my meds. This is my medications and my vitamins, and especially my propranolol, so I can eat food. If I don't eat, or not propranolol, my omeprazole or pantoprazole. I don't take omeprazole anymore. It stopped working for me. Otherwise, I won't be able to eat. So here we go. All right. Let's do it.
Until the first Polynesians, the Maori, arrived around 1300 AD. However, a remarkable discovery was made on the North Island of New Zealand, one which can completely shatter our established understanding of the region's ancient history. Within the dense vegetation of the Kaimanawa Ranges lies a large megalithic structure known as the Kaimanawa Wall, a formation of stone.
There's stones that break in straight lines? Must be giants, right? That's where we're going, so just so you know.
So precisely fitted together that it has ignited a fervent debate about its origins, challenging our understanding of New Zealand's prehistoric past. The wall itself is characterized by a series of tightly fitted stones which, at first glance, appear to have been placed with precision. The stones are massive, with some estimates suggesting that they weigh several tons each.
I always think it's so funny. They're like, all the stones are the stones. All the stones are the same size. It's like, you mean physics reacts on the same substance in the same way over different over the area that's laid out in? You don't say. Oh, these rocks crack. This type of rock cracks this specific way consistently. Must be man-made. What? Physics work consistently.
It was determined that the stones were 330,000 years old and were made of ignimbrite.
I can't believe you're still awake, Miss Lemon. We love you in the Hive. And then Ben got up early to see me this morning, too. Good gosh. You guys are awesome. I have some of the coolest friends.
A volcanic stone made of compressed sand and ash. The nearest outcrop of such stone is 3 miles away, or 5 kilometers. This aspect alone has fueled speculation about the level of sophistication required to assemble such a structure.
Can I just say, I just love looking at, even just the hint of the New Zealand foliage that we get here is just like breathtaking. I love to just stand in a New Zealand forest and just breathe. Look at, you can just tell how the air smells and tastes and feels in this place, right? With all the greenery and the rich soil, the moss. You know it. You know exactly. You know the smell. You know the feeling. That close to the stone.
Should it have been the work of human hands? Upon closer examination, the arrangement of the stones reveals an almost geometric precision. The stones align in a manner that suggests an intentional pattern, with straight lines and angles that are uncommon in natural rock formations. This
Are they, though? Are they unnatural? You think?
peculiar arrangement has led some to propose that the wall could be the remnants of a large megalithic structure, most of which is still unexcavated. In 1996, an investigation into the wall was conducted by archaeologist Barry Brailsford. Brailsford noted that the site was facing precisely due north, which is a pretty remarkable feature that is hardly a coincidence.
There's plenty of strange things about this wall, and one of them is the way it's facing. If you stand with your back to it, you're facing exactly due north. Now, it may be totally insignificant, but there's 360 other points on the compass where it could have been facing.
I've looked at that image of that wall, and I don't know if the whole wall is going to be, I mean, there's going to be some subtle, if you're telling me that that wall is precision, I use that word loosely, is precision, that it's consistently facing due north along the full length of it, I'm impressed. I don't take that claim at face value. I think it's probably roughly north facing, and you got to understand that when you're doing this, a measurement like this, even like real modern construction with computers doing the calculations and stuff, there's still like a 0.02 margin for error on all construction.
Yeah. Noting that many ancient megalithic sites are aligned with the true north, such as the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, Chichen Itza, and many others. Brailsford came to the conclusion that the stone blocks of the site were not natural, and they were precisely cut and stacked. The sensational discoveries of Brailsford led to the publication of an article in the New Zealand Listener called Megalith Mystery. Are giant stones in the Kaimanawa Forest Park evidence of an ancient New Zealand culture? In the article, Brailsford made the following statement. There was no doubt that the stones had been cut. The 4 visible stones in the front wall were a uniform.
So, and he has this pre-Maori pet theory. This guy does. So let's keep that in mind too. That's his sort of his bag. That they called the Waita. How do you say that? I think they say it later in the video, but the Waita people that he's claiming were older than the Maori.
1.6 meters tall and 1 meter wide. In one place, one could insert his arm into a root-ridden cavity and feel the back face and the front face of the next tier. The faces were uncannily smooth, with no saw or adze marks. The interstices where the blocks join were knife blade thin.
Did they look smooth to you? They didn't look smooth to me. Even the cracks looked little. I mean, no shade. I mean, it's masonry.
Further up the hill, the tops of other stones protruded, suggesting a more extensive structure was buried in the hill. The Waitaha are a people often mentioned in discussions about the early human history of New Zealand, but their exact historical context is somewhat controversial and not widely recognized in mainstream academic circles. According to some accounts, particularly those found in certain non-academic sources, the Waitaha were the first wave of settlers in New Zealand. Barry Brailsford is also one of those historians who believe the Waitaha settled New Zealand long before the Maori, so he initially attributed the structure to them. He even talked to some of the Waitaha elders, asking them about the origin of the structure. He was stunned by what they told him.
It's pre-Maori and it's even pre-Waitaha. So the people who were here before.
Now, it's weird that they divide, because the Waitaha, that's how I used to pronounce it, I couldn't remember how they say it, but they are a Maori people, right? They are Maori.
People as we know them today. The people of Waitaha, the nation of Waitaha. And I brought the elders here. We came at 4 o'clock in the morning. And they came from different parts of the North Island.
The Waitaha elders?
Yes. They came here in the early morning, and they came to this wall and they said, we know these people, but they are way before us.
Well, so that's just folklore, dude. Yeah, when we were talking about this last night on, where was I last night? We were talking about, was that last night or the night before? I think it was on the night before. I was on hanging out with Amy, or on Amy's. Amy wasn't there; she had to go to bed. But we were talking about folklore, and like that the Grand Canyon was made by Paul Bunyan wrestling with Babe the Blue Ox, or that the Mississippi River was dredged to drain his bath, or the Land of 1,000 Lakes is Babe the Blue Ox's footprints walking across the Great North. Just these folklore about the origins of natural phenomena. There's the Devil's Tower, right? That's a good one. Devil's Tower sticks up in the middle of, it's this volcanic caldera that's looks really unnatural. It's got streaks down its side like a tree trunk, right? And it looks like a giant tree trunk, but and some people, some flat earthers and things like that will actually say, yes, it's a tree trunk. But the natives had a folklore about it, about a giant bear that scratched its claws on it to give it those streaks down the side of it, right? And Mato was his name. So folklore about people building, being responsible for natural structures, and the Giant's Causeway in Ireland is another one. Look at that. People to this day claim that the Giant's Causeway is not a natural structure. Let's look at some images of that real quick, just to get an idea of how natural physics are going to react to the same type of stone the same way, right? These are washed and kind of smoothed out, but people, you look at this and they say, "Oh no, this has got to be built by somebody because these all break the same way, or these crack the same way, or split the same way." And it's just the nature, the type of stone it is, right? It is cool looking, and it does look artificial, but they are very much natural. And people to this day will argue that they're made by some lost race.
Curiously, the Maori also stated that this construction was not their doing.
Oh, let me catch up on the chat real quick. Sorry, I've been ignoring you guys. I don't know if they're classified as Maori, but genetically they may have some similarities due to where their ancestors come from. Yeah, they call them a Maori iwi. But yeah, as far as the origins, maybe you could be correct. I'm not sure. The Great Lakes were made by Paul Bunyan during a fight with another giant. The lakes are where they threw each other down. Yeah, things like that. Yeah, my people also have ancestral stories, but some of these are clearly fake, like our creation myth. Yes, we have oral traditions, but some are stories. Yeah, Giant's Causeway. There you go, yeah. In Lake Tahoe, there are 4 big scratches in the mountain above Sand Harbor. My family would always say that a giant bear was trying to climb out of the valley. Basalt naturally fractures in hexagon patterns. I know, isn't it cool? I think natural means hairy armpits. Clearly made by Bigfoot, right? Hail Bigfoot, captive desk. Hail Bigfoot. Woo!
As they had never built any megalithic structures. The blocks run for 82 feet or 25 meters in a straight line from east to west.
How can you be so sure that this is man-made?
I mean, the idea that the wall is facing north, the blocks are very uniform. Because the wall is starting to collapse to the west, the blocks are pulling apart from each other. There's spaces in the blocks we can get down.
Or 25 meters in a straight...
Here's a neat thought experiment. Okay, so you're exploring into a forest, right? And you come across... they haven't talked about what this is made out of yet, right? And you come across a straight ridge, or straight wall, we'll call it a wall, straight wall like this. 82 feet long, 25 meters, however you want to look at it. But and you have to make a decision, right? You have to decide, were there ancient people here tens of thousands of years before anybody should have been here, building megalithic structures, before there were people in Australia, before there were people in the Americas, or is this a natural structure caused by geological shifts and maybe plate tectonics, volcanic activity, erosion? Have we looked at how those things might act on this particular type of rock? The way that they fracture, have we tested this rock to see what the fracture patterns are? Like we just looked at with the Devil's Causeway, where they have the hexagonal fracture. Have we looked and seen if this is a stone that has a cubic, cubic, would that be right? A cubic fracture pattern?
Line from east to west.
How can you be so sure that this is man-made?
I mean, the idea that the wall is facing north, the blocks are very uniform. Because the wall is starting to collapse to the west, the blocks are pulling apart from each other. There's spaces in the blocks we can get down behind them. We can see other blocks that are also uniformly cut and squared behind the blocks that we can see. We can see about 9 blocks.
See, a geologist I talked to today said, oh yeah, but there are things like...
Wait, is he saying they can see nine blocks deep? Oh, they talk about the Giant's Causeway too. Can you see like 9 blocks deep in here? Is that what he was just claiming? Let me back that up. They're also uniformly cut.
Also uniformly cut and squared behind the blocks that we can see. We can see about 9 blocks.
See, a geologist I talked to today said, oh yeah, but there are things like the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, which are natural phenomena. Those big square blocks. It's possible.
Okay, right. Now, that is actually basalt. That's basalt crystals, and as that kind of volcanic core cools, it crystallizes into these 6 8-sided crystals. In fact, there's a giant city built in Micronesia, 11 square miles, called Nan Madol. It's built out of...
Researcher and writer Brian Forster, who has visited all of the ancient megalithic sites around the world.
There's also, okay, they want but it's basalt. Other stones have different fracture patterns. Bimini Road's another example. Bimini Road is limestone, and they're rectangles, all of them. They're rectangles, just like what you're looking at here. Oh my gosh, let me show you. I keep having to get sidetracked with different. I don't know if watch 5 minutes into the video, they're gonna bring up Bimini Road anyway. But here, we'll look real quick. Okay, so this is like, yeah, these big rectangular blocks. They look like staircases and slabs. These are natural formations, but they look like they're man-made. Right? This isn't unheard of.
He was also fascinated by the Kaimanawa Wall, and upon visiting it, he noted that the structure is the only stone outcrop in the entire area, and within a 20-mile radius.
Miss Lemon, why are we on the same wavelengths? Because check this out. After this video, I had this pulled. Yeah, this was already on the agenda.
Of the site, he didn't discover any other stones. He also noted that the strangely flat stone blocks were fitted in a way very similar to those he examined in Cusco.
What is interesting is it's the only stone outcrop in this entire area. We drove like 20, 30 kilometers into this ancient rainforest, and this is the only stone at all, and it's has strangely flat surfaces and looks like some of the megalithic work.
This is an Ancient Aliens guy, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that or not. Hold on just a minute, I'll be right back. I'll keep this playing.
Find in the area of Cusco in Peru.
Cutting massive stone blocks and fitting them together without mortar is an advanced ancient construction technique that is seen not only in Peru, but in other parts of the world, such as Egypt. This indestructible form of polygonal masonry was convergently developed by cultures with no communication, of which none possess sufficient tools to quarry, transport,
my hair's driving me
carve,
crazy.
or place these stones.
Thinking
Many
about tying it
believe
back
these
on my next
cultures
break, 'cause
actually
it's just-
inherited these sites and that their true builders were part of a global and technologically advanced ancient civilization that perished at some point in time, possibly due
So here we go. Now we got to go down this deep rabbit hole. Well, it went from, hey, maybe there were old Maori people here who built these stone structures, right? Maybe it was a Maori group of people. Nope, we got to go full tilt Atlantean conquest.
to some sort of cataclysm. Going back to the Kaimanawa Wall, it was also noted that there is a consistent
Kaimanawa.
bevel on the upper stones. Going all the way to the other side of the structure, and the beveled edges on the rocks are identical.
Close examination reveals behind the first lot of blocks
You mean erosion reacts the same on these rocks consistently? It's almost like physics are consistent, right? Weird how physics can do that.
are more layers, separated by a perfect gap. The surface of each block is smooth, as if it's been cut. There are other mysteries too.
In other ancient civilizations, they had a stone which you paid respects to when you came into the site. And everyone apparently has this. And, you know, conveniently, here it is.
One of the
Where'd
most
you pull that out of? Where's that from? You're just making some claims there, aren't you, buddy?
indicative discoveries suggesting the structure was man-made was that some of the lower blocks featured precisely cut recesses, allowing them to slide underneath the blocks above, effectively interlocking both sets of blocks. The lower block was probably dislocated after the catastrophic eruption and earthquake of 186 AD, which most likely caused it to shift.
So, I'm going to do a poll. Which is more likely to be real, this or the Bosnian pyramid? Yeah, I'll play this while I'm talking about it.
Our archaeologists dug down about half a metre below this face here, and this face was still going down, and we used a steel probe to feel underneath, and we were striking rock underneath that. So that gives an indication that at least there's something further down again. And the rocks themselves bend in a sort of a semicircle around, and it may be the shape of some sort of structure.
At the bottom of one part of the structure, there were perfectly smooth rock surfaces with square edges.
We were standing on a piece of rock face which was so smooth we couldn't believe our eyes. It was just like it was poured concrete. And I think that speaks for itself. Square-edged, everything.
Curiously, the same thing was discovered in another section of the site. In one area, the discovery of another floor surface revealed an intriguing characteristic. Upon tapping, the floor emitted a hollow sound, suggesting it might not be a floor at all. Instead, this could indicate the presence of a roof concealing an underlying chamber.
If you, just for the sake of the camp,
It's just a speculation, though. You say, oh, maybe a chamber underneath there. Go down, do it. No, you can't just start digging into the mountainside, but I don't think that there's evidence to support this. Maybe, let me look. There's some spikes coming up here, so something's going to happen that people keep rewatching. So let's sit on the edge of our seats, people.
right, just get your spade and run the spade across the top of that. Now, that just sounds like you would be running a spade down a concrete slab. And that to me is bloody like concrete. That's just amazing.
In fact, in many areas around the site, probes were able to hit solid.
You know, it's the funny thing is concrete is just man-made sediment, right? We pick the sedimentary minerals that we like the best, and that hold up the best, and we make sediment. And we make our own sediment. That's what concrete is.
rock beneath the earth.
Well, we're probing through an area here. It's obviously going down through the pumice a certain distance, and bang, it hits a perfectly level area where it sends a vibration back up through the rod. It makes a kind of a humming sound as we hit something very solid.
And what does the sound of wood, what does wood sound like?
See, it's like a thud thud, but it doesn't have the dink dink. See, and I'm not very deep. See, look at that. See, that's hitting root. If I just go here.
Is that a massive tree next to you with wooden roots spanning probably acres around you? And you're like, oh, maybe I'm hitting some wood?
Hear the difference?
Yep.
Considering the area around the Kaimanawa Wall is relatively flat, some people suggested that the evenly sloped steep mound behind the wall could be hiding an enormous pyramidal structure. On one side of the hill, more stone...
Oh, well, there is a pyramid, finally! New Zealand has a pyramid, guys! The New Zealand pyramid, let's celebrate. You know, it's kind of funny because part of the argument about pyramids is that they're all across the equator now. That's going to throw a big wrench into the ancient alien theory about it being a... What are you going to do with that? Now it doesn't match your that they're lined up around the equator.
Blocks are visible. These blocks, similar in appearance to those on the wall, display a high degree of symmetry and descend the hill with precise alignment. Remarkably, the angle at which these stones are arranged mirrors the overall incline of the hill itself. And right next to this piece, there's another small...
The rocks on the hill mirror the incline of the hill, and he finds that worth noting.
piece of exposed stone blocks with the same degree of incline. A short distance away,
that was blocks, and it looked like rocks to me. Looks like just weathered stone.
Piece has been unearthed, exhibiting the same precise symmetry and alignment as previously observed. Additionally, this piece features the beveled edges seen on the main structure, with the bevel's angle being pretty much...
You must have failed shop class if you think that's a bevel.
...identical to other stones. This consistency raises questions about the site's true nature. Could it be...
I guess it's a change in the angular slope, but it's not a bevel.
...something far more complex than a mere stone wall? Might it actually be an ancient pyramid, akin to those discovered in America? It's worth noting that most of the American pyramids were initially indistinguishable from natural landscapes due to being completely enveloped in soil and vegetation.
No, they were buried during the colonial era to protect them from the conquistadors and invaders. They literally... There's historical records of them burying their pyramids to hide them. The Aztecs, the Maya, they all buried them when their civilizations fell because they wouldn't want their ancient monuments to be destroyed. It's documented. You actually have excavation videos and things about it, in explaining why and how they were buried, because there was a process by which they buried them that's like studied, right? Yeah, there was the processes of which Native American groups built their mounds are studied today because they hold up so well. And this is important in things like in ecological studies of like levee work and things like that, and containing wetlands, how these mounds were structured to hold up and keep water from passing through. So it's important stuff.
Take, for example, the pyramids at Teotihuacan, which resembled ordinary hills with no stones visible on the surface.
Oh, yeah.
Similarly, the temple pyramid at Tikal revealed only a small portion of its structure, much like what we observed in New Zealand with the Kaimanawa Wall. In 2019, research was published on the Tureho, New Zealand...
Did you notice how there's not giant ancient trees growing on top of this, though? Like, when we look at these pictures, see how there's no giant forests of trees growing on top of this? Right? Of big old trees? That's because this was recently buried. within the last couple hundred years it was buried.
Which resembled ordinary hills with no stones visible on the surface.
Yeah. Also a bald hill. Now this one's deep in the rainforest, right? So the rainforest takes back structures pretty quick, but it's mostly still it's mostly vining growth that's covering it here. It's not like it's completely caked in soil. It's obscured by foliage.
Similarly, the temple pyramid at Tikal revealed only a small portion of its structure, much like what we observed in New Zealand.
It didn't, though. That picture is misleading. It was covered with foliage. Foliage is not. I mean, yeah, there was probably some soil from buildup of, like, you know, how you get around your edges of your sidewalk, from plants growing and dying back and growing and dying back. That's just how deposition works from decaying matter. Turns into soil. Did you not know that soil was made up of just basically dead stuff and, you know, some minerals, but mostly dead stuff?
New Zealand with the Kaimanawa Wall. In 2019, research was published on the Tureho New Zealand channel, where they showed a remarkable discovery with the use of ground-penetrating radar. As they show in this picture, 2 or 3 meters below the white tape, which is almost 10 feet, the ground-penetrating radar showed an identical pattern as the pattern corresponding to the wall on the surface. This means that below the ground, the structure continued in the same exact pattern of construction with more massive ignimbrite blocks stacked together. Additionally, the video showed some very intriguing rock.
I see a lot of people voting for the Bosnian pyramid, and I get it that that's probably the most realistic one of these. To me, the Bosnian pyramid is one of the most problematic, though, because it is like the notion that there's multi-racial origins, right? That black people came from Africa and white people originated in Europe, is what they use that pyramid to try to argue for.
Rock incisions on the surface of a hard rhyolite rock. All of this information, taken together, suggests that the structure was something much more sophisticated than a mere wall. But what? It's interesting to note that volcanic rocks, especially those high in silica content, are typically found in areas with geological faults and are associated with strong magnetic fields. The presence of water flowing across such stones can generate
we're getting some spirit science stuff now. Oh boy.
Electric currents, leveraging the silica's properties, similar to its use in computing for information storage and conduction. The site's location on a fault line, known for strong magnetic and telluric energies, led many to theorize that the structure could have served as some sort of energy container, harnessing the Earth's natural forces. But if
if you're gonna harness energy's natural forces, the best way to do it is to build a wall in the middle of the jungle and then let it decay. Does this really look to people like something like man-made? Like, if you look at this, does this look man-made to you? Does it? It doesn't look man-made to me. I'm not an archaeologist or paleontologist or geologist or anything like that. This looks very natural to me.
If this is true, why hasn't the site been properly excavated? Despite all findings, the government of New Zealand refused the notion that the structure is the work of an advanced ancient civilization that settled in New Zealand long before the Maori. In fact, the government actually forbade any archaeological excavations on the site, as you can see on the sign placed before the structure.
This rock formation has been scientifically established to be part of a large ignimbrite outcrop formed naturally 330,000 years ago. It is an offense under Conservation Acts to interfere with or damage natural features on public conservation land. That's based, yeah. And if the Native people had a reverence for this spot or folklore around it, it can be a holy site for them too. I totally grant them that.
The official stance of the authorities is that the site is nothing more than a natural formation, a byproduct of volcanic activity that occurred long ago. But how could they be so sure without conducting a proper excavation? Moreover, why would they forbid others from doing any archaeological work on the site?
There's no archaeological work to be done on the site. It's natural. Are you meaning geological work?
Actually, they have a very good reason for doing so. They refuse the notion that the site is built by an advanced civilization simply because that is the politically correct thing to do. New Zealand, like many countries, grapples with the challenges of reconciling its colonial past with the rights, traditions, and history.
Right, so you want to disenfranchise the Maori of them being the first people of New Zealand, and say, nope, there was an there were a better people before them. It's just the same thing you do with they did with the mound builders, like I mentioned before, or the idea that there was a Aryan invasion of India that gave rise to the prosperity of India that spans most of the modern era. People don't seem to realize that, for most of modern human history, India has been the richest, most prosperous nation in the world, right? For most of human history, India, or for a lot of that time, it was the Mughal Empire, right? From essentially the medieval period right up until the British colonization of India, they were literally the most powerful force in the world, or not most powerful, the richest, most prosperous. And people don't think about that, but so the idea was that, hey, there's no way these brown people figured this out. They must have some white people come teach them this stuff.
Histories of its indigenous people, in this case, the Maori. The arrival of Europeans in the 18th century.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Lemon. Yes, Africa. In Africa, Ethiopia, for example, is the oldest continuous nation in the world. Ethiopia, a lot of what we consider a civilized nation was the groundwork laid in Ethiopia.
Marked the beginning of a period of significant change, conflict, and cultural exchange, the effects of which are still felt today. In New Zealand, the indigenous Maori people are organized into various tribes and sub-tribes. The exact number of tribes can vary depending on how one defines and recognizes them, but there are over 100 of them in New Zealand. Each tribe has its own social and political structure, history, and connection to specific regions of the country. A significant process has been underway in New Zealand for several decades to address historical grievances and recognize.
Right. This is a global movement. We see this in Canada and the U.S. Indigenous people are finally standing up and saying, you know what, stop. I wish we'd do that in Hawaii too. I know there's a small movement in Hawaii, but Americans like to be able to pretend Hawaii is our own little personal vacation spot and not a. Hawaii should be a sovereign nation, but I'm not going to beat that drum because I don't think that will ever happen. But I would love to see Hawaii get its freedom back. It doesn't need to be a state. I don't like they want to be a state either. I wouldn't want to be a state if I was Hawaii. I'd be like, nope, I want to be a nation.
The rights of Maori tribes over their lands. This process is facilitated through the Waitangi Tribunal, which was established in 1975 to investigate and make recommendations on claims brought by Maori relating to actions or omissions by the Crown that breached the promises made in the Treaty of Waitangi, signed in 1840. Many tribes have engaged in this process and have had settlements reached with the New Zealand government that include formal apologies, financial compensation, and the return of certain lands to tribal control, among other forms of redress. These settlements are specific to each tribe and are based on the unique circumstances of their claims. The process of recognizing land rights and settling historical grievances is ongoing, with many tribes having completed settlements and others still in various stages of negotiation or awaiting resolution.
Well, I don't know why this is being played like it's ominous. This is freaking based as hell. Yeah, justice for the Maori people. Even though I'll have to learn to forgive them for what they did to the moa. But, you know, people gotta eat. Big giant birds are delicious. I get it. But, yeah.
In this context, archaeological discoveries and interpretations of historical sites can become highly sensitive issues. The way history is told, the emphasis on certain narratives over others, and the recognition of cultural sites and artifacts can all have implications for national identity.
And this is kind of the same thing we talked about when we did the San Pedro Mountain Mummy on CrypticCorner. What was that? It's been a little bit ago. Not a little bit ago, a couple weeks ago maybe. Anyway, yeah, the indigenous people do have rights to you know, any ancient sites or burials in their ancient homeland. They do have a say on that. And yeah, you want to come in here and say no, it was ancient Atlanteans, and I'm going to dig it up, and it's, you know, I'm not even saying it's I think this is a natural formation, but even if they want to claim, yeah, this was the wall of our ancient people or something, of the people who were here before us. Even if they say that, the natives say that, right? That's their folklore. That's their tradition. That there were ancient people here that built the natural wonders of the world, right? That's fine. They can do that. That's what we were talking about with the Irish when we were talking about, or the Irish and the Scottish when we were talking about the Cushi. You can say, you know, all these mounds, that mountain, this forest, whatever, is sacred to our ancient people, or to, you know, there was some kind of tie to our mythical history of our people. Then leave it the fuck alone. Let them have their thing.
Cultural heritage, and even political and legal rights. The megalithic site at Kaimanawa, given its mysterious nature and the debate over its origins,
so there's no debate over its origin. There's conspiracies about its origin.
Into a category of historical and archaeological interest that is inherently intertwined with these broader issues. Some individuals and groups have suggested that the reluctance to explore certain theories about the site's origins, particularly those that might suggest a pre-Maori human presence in New Zealand, could be influenced by political considerations, as acknowledging such a possibility might undermine the recognized status of Maori as Tangata Wenua, meaning people of the land, and disrupt the established historical narrative of New Zealand. It's
not an established historical narrative. They call it a narrative. It's what the evidence points to. You're just trying to disenfranchise a native people. Shut the fuck up. I'm getting irritated now. I got 10 more minutes of this video.
Cause a significant political and ethnic fracture in the country, and potentially affect land claims and government compensations to the indigenous people. Despite the official dismissal of the Kaimanawa Wall as a mere natural occurrence, the arguments and observations presented by some researchers point to a more complex and possibly intentional origin, suggesting that this structure could be and possibly presented by some mere natural occurrence. The arguments and observations presented by some researchers point to
researchers is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because we look at the researchers you're talking about, and it's the ancient alien people. Those are your researchers.
To a more complex and possibly intentional origin, suggesting that this structure could be more than just a coincidental formation of nature. But if the New Zealand authorities can so easily dismiss such a controversial site just to keep the status quo, does that mean that there may be other discoveries in New Zealand that can prove an ancient civilization existed here?
I'm suspecting that this is the way those roots of that specific kind of tree they keep showing, that the way that it cracks through the bed or through the stone, to get to the groundwater. I think that that's probably a pattern we might be seeing too. I shouldn't say probably. That's my pet theory, that that these trees are specifically able to, you know, well, it's the physics of the stone too, though, because there's the stone's gonna have consistent fracture points, right? So the tree roots would spread out and keep digging for groundwater and hit those fracture points and cause the fractures to split to allow the roots to get down through to get some of that tree something to drink.
The notion that New Zealand remained uninhabited until the arrival of the Maori around 900 years ago sounds a bit off, especially when considering the extensive human presence across the Pacific. Mainstream archaeological evidence and Aboriginal mythology suggest Australia has been settled for over 40,000 years, and even remote locations like...
That's true. But Australia is not in Antarctic, or not off of Antarctic waters either. Not the Polynesians were not cold. They didn't move into subarctic regions. They just didn't, and I don't see why. The expectation is that they would have established settlements here prior to that, right? If we look at the way that they spread equatorially and then dropped and then moved southward, right? That's why we have islands in like off the Philippines and stuff that have been inhabited for, you know, tens of thousands of years, and then we have islands that are like Hawaii at the same latitude that's only been inhabited for a few hundred years, so maybe 1,000 years. Yeah, a couple, maybe Hawaii. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I don't want to speak out of my ass, but it's the same situation here. It depends. It's just migration patterns, right? Currents, weather patterns, seasonal. You know, a lot of factors come into play.
Like Easter Island have a rich history of human habitation. Given this backdrop, the idea that the islands of New Zealand remained undiscovered until 900 years ago seems quite peculiar. Adding to the intrigue are stories from Maori folklore, which seem to hint at a pre-existing knowledge of New Zealand.
Hold on, I'm just checking something here because Easter Island I think is about the same, has been populated about the same amount of time. Let me see. History. Rapa Nui settlement. Yeah, from 300 to 1200 CE. So it's the same time frame. What are you talking about? It's the same time frame as New Zealand.
Among these tales, we can find the very reason the tribes came to New Zealand. It was the quest for greenstone, punamu, a highly valued nephrite jade found in the South Island. The lore raises compelling questions. If New Zealand was truly untouched and unknown, how did early Maori or their Polynesian ancestors come to know of the existence and location of its greenstone? This narrative suggests that knowledge of New Zealand and its resources...
So most places that we eventually colonize, we spend decades, if not centuries, visiting and hunting on and making temporary encampments in before we set up permanent settlements. So even like New Zealand, right? It's doubtful that the very people who discovered it also colonized it, right? It would be something along the lines of probably maybe fishermen, or people looking for timber or for construction material to build weapons and things like that, or tools with. That they traveled to New Zealand and harvested stuff and brought it back home. That's like not a unheard of thing and they could have done that for centuries before. That's how, like, the Vikings, when they were in Greenland, right? They were going to Labrador on the coast of North America to get wood. They were going there and chopping wood and hauling it back to Greenland for decades, right? Before Columbus or anything. They didn't set up a permanent settlement. They just had temporary camps. And then you get the Lacroix Meadow. I think that's how you say it, Lacroix not LaCroix's the drink. Laox. It's A-U-X-E. I don't know how you say it. I'm not going to pretend I know how to say it, but yeah, so we found that the ruins of that because they temporarily travel to other locations to gather resources.
Might have existed before its widely recognized discovery and settlement, sparking curiosity and speculation about the island's history and the extent of ancient exploration. But the real question is, was there a civilization living in New Zealand in these ancient times? In 1972, a remarkable discovery atop a hill in Silverdale, New Zealand, piqued the interest of those fascinated by the country's ancient past. Here, buried under layers of humus accumulated over centuries, lay a series of mysterious stone boulders. These boulders had lain undisturbed.
We will cover the boulders around the world at some point, I'm sure. But we're not going to
hidden under the earth for potentially a couple of thousand years. What made the find particularly intriguing was the nature and placement of these boulders. Approximately 10 to 12 of them were located at the peak of a clay hill in Silverdale, a setting where coning boulders could not naturally occur due to the geological composition of the area. This raised immediate questions about their origin.
All of a sudden, he's interested in the geological composition of the area. We're 22 minutes into a 30-minute video, and only the first time you mention that is when you're trying to use it to debunk the positioning of these big stone balls.
As such boulders typically form over millions of years in sea sediments, starting as small shells that become coated with layers of sand and lime. Their presence on a clay hill, far from their natural incubation environment, suggested a deliberate act. Ancient people, at some point in history, had transported these markers to the hilltop as part of an overland alignment system. Another interesting find was made after the relocation of these massive boulders in 1992 due to the construction of a motorway. It was during this process that features were discovered on the boulder.
Look, that one's not even completely rounded. Look, it's got like lumpy stuff up over here. I just want to show you the spherical sides.
Features unmistakably made by human hands. This was a significant revelation.
So if you go to like the rivers and stuff around here, the ground looks like this, just big rocks with holes bored in. This was bored, you can tell it's bored by water. It's silly that they think it was made by a tool.
Further investigations revealed that these boulders lay beneath a layer of tephra ash from the 186 AD eruption of Mount Taupo, indicating that the human-made modifications predated this event.
There are no human-made modifications on this, just to be clear.
Timeline places the alterations to the boulders over 1,000 years before the recognized arrival of the Maori in New Zealand, suggesting a much older, previously unknown chapter of human activity in the region. Among the modifications are beautifully carved bowls, known as Bulan stones in other parts of the world, particularly Ireland, where they are part of ancient blessing and cursing altars. These bowls were meticulously chipped and carved by hand, a process distinct from any mechanical drilling or boring.
I like that they showed a dog here a minute ago. I know it's off topic a little bit, but because there's a native dog that the Maori had called a curry that doesn't exist anymore. It's really cool. It's kind of like a dingo looking, but a little bit smaller.
Incredible discovery is the Kangaroa rock carvings, which were tucked away in the vast expanses of the Kangaroa forest, one of the largest plantation forests in the world. Many believe these carvings offer a tantalizing glimpse into an ancient past that may predate known Maori settlements. The exact origins of the Kangaroa rock carvings remain a topic of debate among historians and archaeologists. The detailed craftsmanship evident in the carvings suggests a sophisticated understanding of art and symbolism, raising the possibility that they could be the work of an unknown ancient civilization that inhabited New Zealand's shores long before the arrival of the Maori people. The carvings themselves depict...
This is Maori art that you're trying to attribute to other ancient Atlanteans or whatever the hell you're talking about. This you literally like, oh, this is politically being covered up because it's not politically correct, dude. You're literally saying, oh yeah, the people that live here when we moved here were too dumb to make this stuff. They could not have done this. They're primitives. That's the argument here, and it pisses me off.
Picked a variety of figures and motifs, some of which bear resemblance to the known iconography of Polynesian cultures, while others seem entirely unique, belonging to no known historical or cultural narrative. Supporting the theory of an unknown ancient civilization are the mysteries surrounding the techniques used to create the carvings. The precision and depth of the carving suggest the use of tools and methods not traditionally associated with the early inhabitants of New Zealand.
There it was. Did you hear it? There was the racism.
In the Waipu, traditionally and depth of the carving suggests the use of tools and methods not traditionally associated with the early inhabitants of New Zealand. Not traditionally associated with the early inhabitants of New Zealand. In the Waipua Forest in Northland, there's another site believed to be part of a pre-Maori civilization, where the ruins of ancient stone structures were found. These ruins had been noted and written about by early Europeans, who wondered about the stone builders who had lived there. The only thing left to the public are these photos taken on the 11th of November 2000. After a 3-year government investigation and excavation, all findings, including stone structures, artifacts, and everything else of note, were sent away to remain hidden under a 75-year restriction, which will last.
Artifacts? Artifacts. Sure.
Last until 2063. At the end of the archaeological excavations, all public access to the area was denied. Visitors wanting to see the stone artifacts were turned away, and access requests by historians and archaeologists were denied, with the reasons given being that the area had been declared tapu and that it was under a Waitangi Treaty claim.
So the people are asking the government to dig on native land when they should be asking the natives if they can dig on their land. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay, can I dig up your ancestral graveyard? And you're like, why won't they let us? That's sus. That's suspicious. If you want to, why you want to stop us from digging up the bones of your ancestors? What's wrong with you? What are you trying to hide? For fuck's sake.
Photos we have, we can see prominent ancient walls emerging distinctly above the layer of humus. Additionally, there are sequences of boundary stones demarcating.
And I'm not even dismissing that this one could be something archaeological, right? From what I see here, there's nothing that seems too out of the that looks like a natural formation, right? That they're trying to pass off as ancient structures, because it's not like megaliths and things like that they're saying are hundreds of thousands of years old. I don't know much about this site here. I picked this video because of the wall. I wanted to talk about the wall, so this is kind of a second site that they're focusing on, just to I guess they're trying to give you a bunch of minimal facts on this. But if this is a Maori archaeological site, hell yeah, I stand by them saying, hey, don't come in here and dig this stuff up. Indiana Jones is not a hero, right? In the movies, sure, he's fighting Nazis, but to really do what Indiana Jones does is like cringe as fuck.
Specific sections. These stones encircle a central pile of stones, which likely was once a beehive house, a type of rudimentary dwelling that has since collapsed into a disorganized heap. This method of constructing stone dome shelters was widely used in megalithic Great Britain and continental Europe, and it appears that New Zealand's pre-Maori stone people adopted the same technique for their homes. Moreover, numerous boulders
pre-Maori stone people
bearing deep groove marks, likely made using stone tools, can be found throughout the forest. These grooves may have been created during the sharpening and shaping of adzes. Such boulders are plentiful and could possibly serve as some kind of pictorial representation. The significant wear on these carved surfaces suggests they are,
like I said, you can go down to the river here and see surfaces that look like this. This is just natural weathering of rock. That's what weathered rock looks like. This is like, not even vaguely, this is like quintessential weathered rock. This would be like, if you wanted a picture of what weathered rock looked like in a dictionary, this would be next to it. Right? It's worn down. There's cracks. It's worn down. The edges are worn down into the cracks, creating kind of curved edges with plants and mosses growing out between them. This is weathered rock.
of considerable antiquity. It's likely that these structures were built thousands of years ago.
Oh, sweetie, if you gotta go to bed, Miss Lemon, you go to bed. I appreciate you hanging out for as long as you did. Yeah, we're about to finish this section up, and then I got Bree's Bestiary, and then we're pretty much done. But yeah, you don't feel obligated to stick around for the whole time. It's like a 3.5 hour long show, or at least 3 hour long show.
Ago, when the Waipua forest was not yet a forest, but a fertile ground. The Maori themselves state that they don't know who built this ancient stone city. The Waipua Forest Stone City should be a national treasure, if not a worldwide historic place. Yet not only is it being ignored and not protected, but its destruction is actually being encouraged. This leads to the conclusion that the site could be evidence of a prehistoric civilization, which explains why the New Zealand government wants to avoid its existence being acknowledged by the public or the world. There are many other sites all across New Zealand, like the Puketapu Hill and the Waitapu Valley, which have precise stone markings that could serve as an ancient astronomical observatory site, or the Tapapakanga Park, which many feel is another collapsed ancient settlement with beehive-styled stone houses.
I don't know where they're getting the idea that there were beehive-style houses in. I'll listen while I sleep, Bree. We have spring break some weeks from now. Let's do a live stream together. Yes, sweetie, let's do it. Let's make it happen. All right, I'm going to wrap this up, and then we're going to...
While the efforts to respect indigenous claims are undeniably crucial, they have in this...
Well, kids just showed up with the other doors, so back to work. Y'all have a great... You too, John. Thank you for hanging out.
This instance led to a paradox where the potential knowledge of New Zealand's ancient past remains ensconced in shadows. This approach not only stifles academic freedom, but also deprives the public and the global community of understanding.
Why can't I dig up the graves of native people to support my conspiracy theory? This is erasure, cries the angry white people who want to prove that Atlanteans conquered the globe in ancient times.
A possibly transformative chapter in human history. This suppressed chapter could contribute significantly to our understanding of human migration patterns, architectural practices, and societal structures in the prehistoric Pacific. The issue at heart is not merely about access to information, but about acknowledging and integrating the full spectrum of New Zealand's heritage into its national identity and history. The anticipation grows for a more inclusive and comprehensive narrative that honors both New Zealand's indigenous cultures and its mysterious ancient predecessors. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about another megalithic and advanced ancient complex in the Pacific, you can watch our documentary on Nan Madol. The link is in the top pinned comment.
All right, and I was going to read this article, but I think I'm just going to let this guy, because it's kind of running late on the show. There was a video that I just watched, so give me just a moment to get it pulled up. It's just this native Maori guy dunking on this whole conspiracy. Bear with me. Where are you, sweetie? Yeah, it's really short, like a 3-minute video. All right, here we go. And I like this guy's enthusiasm for this topic too. So,
time to put on your tinfoil hats. Now, every week I find myself having to explain to some conspiracy theorists that there was no human beings in Aotearoa, New Zealand prior to Polynesians. And they tell me, no, there was. There was great civilizations, and the evil Polynesians came along and exterminated them. They exterminated them even down to the microbial level. They wiped out
and
any existence.
again, nomadic sea people, like the Polynesians were at this time, came and destroyed a giant empire of stone building Atlanteans.
Of any civilization. They must have been amazing archaeologists, Māori, to be able to do that. Now, I'm going to explain to you why no human beings were here in Aotearoa, New Zealand prior to Polynesians. It's down to they didn't make the trip.
Noel Hilliam, an amateur historian, claimed that this woman was part of a vast European civilization right here in Aotearoa. The mystery woman set out from Wales in the British Isles, travelling 28,000 kilometres out into the Atlantic Ocean, down into the South Atlantic Ocean, boxing around Africa, not encountering dangers like scurvy, high seas, or no charts to navigate from, and arrive safely circumnavigating the globe. What would be more plausible is discovering a big continent like Africa. Or why not discover the continent of America? Now, Polynesians, the greatest explorers in human history, set out from Rarotonga, following bird migrations to the Kermadec Islands. Then they island hop from there to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Mr. Hilliam made a submission to the Constitutional Review Panel in regards to his amateur archaeology. As the Maori are not the original people to settle New Zealand, with all the documented and physical evidence available, I am totally for the abolishing of the Maori favoritism and racism that occurs in this country. Noel Hilliam. Despite a plethora of amateur theories about Melanesian, South American, Egyptian, Phoenician and Celtic colonization of New Zealand, there is not a shred of evidence that the first human settlers were anything other than Polynesian.
All right, yeah. So there was this article. It's the same one that Miss Lemon was referring to about this wall and debunking all the pieces and puzzles of it. I was gonna read it, but it's a little long. I don't have enough time left in the segment for it because we're already out of time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to link this in the chat. So, oh shoot, where did that go? Cripes on a stick. I'm all over the place. I'll tell you what. Go to my own channel. I closed the chat. There we go. Oh shoot, where did there you go. Alright. So link that in there. So if you wanted to read more about why this is BS, this is from way back in November 1996. This has been debunked for a long time. The people are still pushing this narrative. It's kind of nuts, honestly. But what do you think? Was there an ancient civilization that preceded the Maori in New Zealand? Did they come from Europe and build European-style houses? Let me know in the comments down below. Please remember to take care, be kind. We will see you next time.